Right, ladies and gentlemen, it's 8 a.m. This is Morning Cafe. A very, very good morning to you. In case you're just waking up, as you probably have your breakfast there. This is your weekly dose of relationships this particular Wednesday. And this day, we discuss something that you've probably encountered. You're in a relationship and someone tells you, unakuga toxic sana. They probably don't give you a reason, but then they're just like, you're toxic. So that is what we're discussing this particular morning. Have you ever been in a toxic relationship, or are you actually in a toxic relationship? Share with us your experience and tell us how is it really going. If you were in a toxic relationship, how were you able to exit na kutoka kwa hiyo toxic relationship? What does even toxic relationship mean? Right here in studio, we do have the experts for this conversation. They'll be telling us all that. 0795 045 864 is the number to call in live. Be sure that phone numbers are open. We'll be picking your call. You can tell us where you're calling us from. You can mute your TV or just have it off and tupigie simu tuambie hii experience yako yote imekuaje. Or if you prefer anonymity, you can text us 22047 as our SMS number, on WhatsApp 0793267279. Judith Ngerechi, a wellness coach as well as champion, as well as Richard Ziwa Zimbalist, the counselor. Let them introduce themselves. I'll start with you. They'll say ladies first. Hi, Ngerechi.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much. My name is Judith Ngerechi. I am a champion for women health and wellness, as well as teenage mothers. Thank you so very much. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you for hosting me. It's been a privilege to come into your studios this morning. I think there's nothing that excites me like speaking on matters family and relationship. That's what I enjoy doing best in what we do, and many of the expression of the programs that we do. But I want to take cognizance of the fact that in one of the programs that we rolled out for Dr. John Maxwell called Beyond Success Equip program, there's a lesson number 5 that redresses matters relationship, but before that one there's lesson number 4 which speaks on relationship, and the intro subject says that people won't go along with you as long as they can get along with you. So it's such a joy, such an honor to be here to redress some of these themes as subject related to toxic relationship.
Right, fantastic. Before we actually move on, you're both Ugandan and Kenyan, right?
Yeah, I'm an imported husband.
I was asking that because I know the census is continuing.
Yes.
In Uganda. So
yes.
I don't know if you...
I am an imported husband, so my wife is Kenyan and I'm Ugandan.
All right.
My children are all born here, so I've been here for the last 18 years.
Great.
Yes.
So now, as we always do every single Wednesday, before we actually dive into the conversation, we take a look at an African proverb that really resonates with our conversation for the day. And today I picked up a Moroccan proverb, all the way from Morocco. And the proverb says, the quarrel of lovers is a renewal of love. The quarrel of lovers is a renewal of love.
It had to be African.
For sure.
And well, the creators of these proverbs were probably some way back in the days. So I'm curious from both of you. I'll start with Ngerechi. What do you make of this proverb? The meaning of it, and particularly in the context of right now, in the age and the generations that you're in right now. The quarrel of lovers is the renewal of love.
I find that Africans, we have very interesting proverbs, and I think it just resonates with the fact that each and every relationship, even if it's just platonic friendships, there's always disagreements, and I think that is what fuels people to renew their thinking of their significant other or their friends. You start looking at them from a different perspective. Then from that quarrel, you start having different views of them and different perceptions, and then maybe from that it either becomes stronger, or it can go sideways. So I think it's quite an interesting proverb to describe relationships, to say the least, because again, if you don't have arguments in your relationship, something is very wrong. Okay. Something is definitely very wrong.
All right, we'll get to know what's the limit of these arguments. Yes. What do you make of this proverb? The quarrel of lovers is the renewal of love.
It's a very provocative statement. I assume that that must have been an old man who said that statement. He's been around the block. Though age does not necessarily mean the expression of wisdom. Sometimes old people say certain things and people take them for wisdom, but sometimes the age comes along without wisdom. But in that text, I think it's an expression that there are seasons in relationships, and people fight. They find themselves into experiences that might provoke a necessity for one to not necessarily be as romantic as it were when you started in your first relationship. In your relationship, it could have been that now you're in the winter season of your relationship, or you could be in spring or summer. So in between that experience, you could have fights and squabbles that might necessarily not be that the best of the expression. You're having some quarrels and squabbles between yourselves. So it goes with the relationship, I should say. I don't know how many times I have fought with my wife of 15 years. There are times I'm not that romantic. That does not mean we don't love each other. We genuinely love each other, but there are times where the best of the experiences in life get to you and you fight and squabble and say some things that are not necessarily pleasant, as long as you don't use them with the intent to hurt and harm your spouse. Yeah.
Right. So even as we continue, allow me to take a look at some Facebook comments here. So the question is, have you ever been in a toxic relationship? Share with us your experiences and just tell us. Or you probably know someone who has ever been in a toxic relationship. You can head to our Facebook page, TV47KE, and talk to us. Let me sample a few that will really help us as we continue hii conversation yetu. Munyasi Nana anasema, kwanza upate mother-in-law mwenye alitoka kwa marriage na ako town single. Hama na mapema kuzitunt last. Mwingine anasema I'm heartbroken nikiona Chelsea ikiwa chini kama msimu huu. Anyway. Wewe mwingine ni magumu hata unashindwa. Hayasemeki hivi yani. Wamba says relationships stress can make you attend unknown funerals just to cry freely without explanation. That is what really people are really going through out here. And Richard, for the amount of time that you've been talking to couples, all right, well, I do start with now ladies first. Gretchen, I mean, as well as you being a counselor, you definitely talk to couples that will be married or who are really thinking about getting into the marriage institution. And when you take a look at back then, the definition of a toxic relationship and right now, has it changed? And first off, because I think right now, we're having this conversation with Fred early in the morning, and him telling me, right now, we as Gen Zs, we throw that word, half-assededly and say, we're toxic, but then we don't really understand the meaning. So has the meaning changed and has it evolved over time?
Toxic is toxic, and I don't think it has changed. It is just some people are describing it from their limited perception and understanding. And when you look at what is toxic, it's something that is harmful or could potentially harm you. Now, when we talk about a toxic relationship, back in the day, it would be you're in a marriage, probably your partner is having extramarital affairs, or you're being abused, whether it's physically, whether it's emotionally. When you're going through such cycles and you don't want to leave, is for whatever reason, you continue to stay in that toxic cycle. Now, nowadays, you've used the term Gen Z. I'm not in that category, so what I find, the term toxic, the term narcissist, it's being thrown around a lot lately. And for anyone that their relationship doesn't work, whether it's friendship, whether it's a relationship, you'll find someone who'll be like, my friend is a narcissist, my friend is toxic, because either you don't agree with their views or you don't want to accept, you don't want to take responsibility for your own shortcomings. So I think the meaning hasn't changed. What has changed is the perception and how people are using that word to justify their own actions or lack thereof. So I don't think toxic remains toxic. So when you're in a cycle that is continuously harmful to you, but you do not want to leave for any reason, maybe you tell yourself, oh, I have children, where will I go? Or I've invested in this relationship, or I've put money in, I've spent time. So that fear of the unknown, you do not know what will happen next, is what keeps people, in that continuous toxic cycle. So that is how I would describe it. So I don't think it has changed. It is just the perception of the people based on what they feel or how they understand it.
Right.
Yes.
Richard, how about you? I mean, the fact that you've interacted with quite a number of couples, they all have variant experiences. I mean, still on the whole matters, being toxic and everything. Do you feel like, when you take a look at when you're starting out, talking to these, couples, and right now, has the whole definition and the dynamics of a toxic relationship, have they changed?
I think my friend has fully been able to describe it exceptionally well. I think that was really a good one. One of the things that you can't deny is that toxicity in any relationship is an outflow of what is internally inside an individual. So what is inside is what you pour out in a relationship.
Yeah.
So if there's a lot of poisonous things that are related with that individual in their persona, which has come as a result of where they come from, like the mention you've read on Facebook, someone who has talked about a mother, quite likely if the stream you've been drinking from is been toxic and poisonous, you carry that not only internally inside of you, but will find expression when you have any relationship. As talking to you earlier, and I made mention that if a man or woman has not been healed from what hurt them, quite likely they will bleed on anything that did not cut them.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't matter whether it's in marriage, it's in a dating experience, it's in a courting relationship, you'll always bleed on people who did not hurt you. So it is important to trace it from where its origin is coming from. If you come from families where it's been toxic, poisonous, there's been lack of love, there's been a lot of abuse, there's been a lot of infidelity, there's been a lot of financial inappropriate behavior expressed through finances, you carry that toxicity everywhere you go. So for generations past to present, I think it's still the same expression, except that we've given it different branding because of the generational gaps that we have. The Generation Z and Alpha, they will call it different names. Millennials will call it different names. We in Generation X, we call it different name, but still the same kind of abusive behavior patterns that are expressed or find exhibited by different individuals based on where they're coming from. That informs them their approach towards relationship.
The dynamics have changed. When you take a look at our forefathers and back then, even the dynamics of a marriage and a relationship were totally different compared to right now. The social contrast of owning someone. We can also tell us, I mean, is that also applicable right now? When you'd find a man saying, I took quite a number of cows to your place, so I literally own you. Compared to right now, I mean, some of these conversations, they have changed. The whole dynamics have changed. Ngerechi.
What has actually changed is that this generation is much more expressive. People express their thoughts, people express their feelings, people speak their minds. Back then, especially, let me use the generation of our parents, for example, you would never even speak about the ills of your husband. If your husband does something at home, no one will ever hear that. You, as the wife, you end up protecting your husband's bad behavior and everything else that happens within the homestead. That is why it was not much more pronounced at the time. And then the rate of divorce, the rate of separation was much more minimal at the time. Right now, if this is if you do something to someone, believe me, it will be on social media in like a minute or two. Someone will be there ranting, talking about, oh, he did this to me or she did this to me. And then it becomes a whole, continuous cycle. So what happens is now this generation, especially the Gen Z, and I love them because they are so expressive. They speak, like it's a generation that you will not oppress them. If it's not working, like now you find that they're expressing themselves to the extent that some of the young ones that I work with, someone will tell you, do we have a mental day? Mental health day? And I'm thinking, are you serious? Then now you start asking yourself questions. And in our time, when you get employed, you can't even address your boss looking at him like this. We would just hush behind the scenes. But now, they will tell you, you know, my working hours is between 8 and 5. I will not do anything past 5, you know. So it has changed in terms of now people are becoming more expressive. People are also becoming self-aware. So once they go through that process of self-awareness, it helps them learn to know what they can take, what they cannot be able to take. So it now becomes a situation where our parents were a bit more reserved. Our moms, in fact, what we were advised when you're getting married is a woman is the one that builds the home. When you go to your place, you're supposed to cover your husband's nakedness. You're supposed to cover your husband's shame. And we took that because...
So that means, Richard, even listening to them, because even for our parents' generation, even for now the grandparents, they were teaching them this is how marriage, the marriage institution looks like. So that means the probably things happened in that marriage for their generation, and it could have been considered toxic at this age, but then for them it was, well, this is how marriage is, so ini kawaida. But then right now, the fact that now times have changed, right now we are considering them as toxic.
Yeah. I like the way you have said it, because that's what the reality is. On Saturday we had an experience with a cohort for PMCC at Park University, people who are going through premarital and they're getting married. And we're guiding them matters related to how to go about the newfound relationship or their journey of negotiating for a bride and getting married, and what the ABCs of what to do and what not to do. And it's interesting because we have different mentors that we work with as we journey with these wonderful people in the community where we're at Park University. And some thoughts constantly came up, and you can tell there's a huge generational gap. The way marriage is perceived with this generation, the millennials, and the generations past is totally different. There's a sense of accountable values that were expressed by the older generation in a sense of a community that held them accountable in relationships, which is not necessarily consistent with this new generational way of running a relationship. There's a sense of exclusivity where they do things the way they want to do them without necessarily having a fallback of a community to hold them accountable to certain inalienable values that drive relationship. In our fathers, as much as they would say that the things of the house are not supposed to be expressed outside the house, there are certain things they kept to themselves because they had a way of dealing with their own shortcomings, weaknesses, and failures. But now in this age and generation where there's no sense of accountability, you take it to social media for accountability, and then they pick it off and they blow it out of proportion. If you saw King Kaka responding yesterday to people who are saying that his children are stolen away and the wife stole away the children, and he's like, hey guys, I know you're creating content, go most, because the reality is there's family, children, and wife involved. Actually, my children are reported to school today, and my wife is here. No one is out there outside the country stealing my children, and there's no death certificate. The community you are counting yourself to might not be the community our parents are counted for to themselves to when certain things broke loose. I think we need to revisit a couple of things. Young man needs mentors. Accountable relationships that can help them to navigate their chaos when they're going through it.
And as you say that, because right now, in this age, as you're saying, Gireche, the fact that right now you're in a relationship and you feel, no, this man or this woman isn't treating me as I should, or rather as I know, I take it to social media and I write a very long thread on X, and they say, oh, so this woman, blah, 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 you know, she did this. And people there give you validations. They're like, no. Because, well, technically, if you actually sat down with Richard or you, they'd give you a very different and a very sober conversation about it. But then you'd go to, the digital space and they give you a very different kind of, different theories, and they're telling you, you're achana na, you're actually right now, delete her number and all that. When you take a look at back in the days of forefathers, it was it sort of managed? Because put it this example, it was just an argument or a very slight scuffle. At that time, it was managed and it was discussed as two adults, and that was it. But right now, it's the same level of scuffle. But then right now, because you know that there's digital space, you can explode it out there.
What I can say is a lot of people want to be heard, and most often than not is you want your side of the story to be the real side of the story. You want it to be the truth. You don't want, the reason I find most people going to social media or to just, wanting to express things to an exterior or external audience is because they want to justify their own actions, and they also want to project the insecurity in the sense that they don't want to take responsibility for their contribution. So when you go out, is you don't want to sit with, you want to talk to someone that is unbiased, number one, and number two is 90% of the people on social platform, they do not know you personally. They do not know your story unless someone knows you on a personal level. So when you go out there and start expressing something about your significant other or about a friend, is you are creating an impression of enmity towards that individual. So you're creating aggression from different quarters to that particular person so that you can be able to feel good about yourself. Because there is, you see, when our parents were in relationships, 90% of the time you would find that they would call a pastor or they will talk to the best couple, the guys that stood by you guys when you're getting married. So you will have those discussions behind closed doors. 90% of the time, you would never find those discussions on social media unless it's a very prominent person and it got out by default. But nowadays, we want to air all our dirty linen in public because we want to justify our own feelings. We want to feel some type of way.
Is it working though? I mean, because at that time when you call a pastor or one of your close family members, study naye pamoja, and you say the book kujeni msaidie. Did that work? Did those dynamics work, or did the social media kind of frenzy? Is it working right now? It
depends with the agenda, number one, because it works and it doesn't work. Because when you talk to someone behind closed doors, it means you are willing to take responsibility for your actions, first of all. Because by the time you're agreeing to sit with someone else to help out with your relationship issues, it means that you are genuinely looking for help. But the moment you go to social media, something can go viral in a split second. How do you control that? There is nothing, you can't control it. So I feel like it's an emotional outburst most of the time. And also, it is you wanting to get an upper hand. Because the moment you go out and start posting something about your significant, without even talking to them in the first place, because 90% of the time, these people have not even spoken. So you're just airing your own emotional frustrations. And then, when you sit back and you start, thinking about it, you regret. But then once you put something on the internet, the internet never forgets. So I think I feel like it worked better, when people would just talk behind closed doors, they would find solutions, and then it would create an environment where someone can express themselves, someone can be heard, and you can be listened to. But right now, when you put it on social media, who is listening to you? Because people give you their opinions. And again, what I usually say is the internet has a mob mentality. No one cares genuinely. Oh. They don't care. Yeah.
And Richard, this brings up a whole other bit of the people who'd really, let's say, even if it's a couple, they'd feed on the whole high and excitement of being in a toxic relationship. They're just telling us that, ukiona argument, hakuja kuwa argument, then again, there's a whole other thing. And again, you're also telling us, your own experience. So where do you, first, before you actually get to the whole drawing the line, what's the whole excitement about having some arguments, hapa na pale, kukosana? What's the whole excitement about that? Speaking on kama mtu bado sijaingia hapo.
I think when the purpose of a thing is not known, abuse is inevitable.
Yeah.
If you're in a relationship and you do not know the reason why you have your purpose partner in that context, abuse is inevitable with that individual. There's a hype that is driven by this young generation, or even the past generation, where they say, if I don't beat my wife, I don't feel I really genuinely love her. Then there are those who say, if my husband has not beaten me, I don't feel loved. So it's theatrical when you look at it, but it's abuse. There's no better way to express it than that way. That's abuse. Because you can't say that you genuinely love and care for yourself, and then you find pleasure in beating and brutalizing your other significant other. It could be your fiancé, it could be your spouse. I think cultural themes that have been communicated in the past that have not been questioned, where that if you love a woman and have not beaten her, you don't really love her. Then some come from that experience and say, me, I saw my mother, litandikwa. It informs them to think that it's okay to beat your spouse, to beat your wife. And you find young boys who do that. But you see, the boy is dictating the mature adult person in a mature adult body because of what they saw when they're growing up.
And the person, sorry to cut you short, so help us understand the reasoning behind all that of if I don't beat my wife like this, or again the wife says if I'm not beaten, then he doesn't love me, and that again resonates even for the man, saying if she doesn't scream at me and all that and argue at me, then she doesn't love me. Help us understand the whole psychology behind that.
I think the traumas you've not healed from, like I said earlier, it's what informs what you do later with whoever you get involved with. If you've not been healed from some of these abuses that happen when you're growing up, if a young child perceived, the young girl perceived that that is the expression of love, they might carry it wherever they go. Yeah. If a young boy who saw that and justified it as the correct response towards love will be able to communicate the same wherever they go. So it is important to trace it from its root. From its root, there's no relevance of it in a healthy, hilariously happy, red-hot monogamous relationship, I should say. Yeah. There should be a correct response towards that stimulus. If one has been informed the correct way of loving and caring for someone that they love, technically, when they get married, they look forward to see the same. So models and examples that have been brought to our exposure dictate how we respond to the people that we say we love and care for. So if you've seen it wrong, you will communicate it wrong. If you've seen it right, quite naturally you will express that. In my own experience, as I've been genuinely involved with this wonderful lady, Lydia, I know she's watching. Hi, Lydia. It's a truth. I have seen her talk of her father. They've been in love with each other for the last 56 years. And she would rightly say, I've never seen my father beat my mother. Quite likely, she can't come into a relationship with me and I'll be traumatized on how she would respond to my stimulus of love, because she knows the correct way of loving. And the same is true with me. I've been able to be exposed to people who have loved each other for the last 70 years, and I'm like, wow, that's worth imitating. But if you've not seen it, you won't act it. So my own experience is that anyone who has been exposed to a certain measure of abuse, they will express it. It finds expression in any relationship they get involved with. I don't know what has been your approach, but that's what I've been able to witness.
No, I agree with you 100%. Is we project what we know, what we are accustomed to. And that's why you said hurt people. Because the moment you come from a home that there's no love, what do you know about love to express? You can only express what you know, what you understand. And that is where you'll find a lot of times people that are in abusive relationships, or even in this toxic cycle, for example, someone gets beat up and you ask them, why aren't you leaving? Then they'll tell you, I don't know, I can't leave him, I love him. It's because possibly they came from an abusive home. If their mom used to be beaten and stayed, for her, the concept of staying in that relationship is you preserving your marriage. Okay. And then again, there's this aspect of what will the society say? What will people think of me? Assuming you go to church, assuming you live in a place where people perceive you some type of way. You want to preserve that image. So what will you do? You will stay in that relationship, you will apply makeup to cover the bruises, and you will show up and you will hold this person.
You come from separate houses,
yes.
you come into church together.
Exactly. So you will project what it is that you are conformed to, what it is that you understand, and then what it is that, again, I use the term limited perception and understanding. That is what you are accustomed to. So that's the only thing you can project.
Right. And just a reminder for the viewer, wherever you're watching us from, our phone numbers are open. 0795 045 864 is the number to call us live, and Richard as well as Gretchen will be answering and just interacting with you. Have you ever been in a toxic relationship? Or rather, are you actually in one that so far, the fact that they've actually helped you understand what a toxic relationship, how it looks like. And you'll see, I am in a toxic relationship, kumbe yako tu iko sawa. Some arguments here and there. But then, have you actually ever been in one? Talk to us and call us live. Tell us your name, tell us where you're coming from and where you're calling us from, rather. Na utuambie, actually, zima TV ama, just have it mute and talk to us very, very audibly. And because talking on the same, because earlier on ulikuwa unatuambia arguments hapa na hapa ni si mbaya, because again, might be too kuna shida maybe. So expound for us on that. Where is the line that unaona this is where we do the arguments, lakini ikifika hapa this is too much.
Yeah.
And then if it goes now below, a whole week we haven't argued, tumekubaliana and everything. Upper then there's a problem. Where do you draw the line between we agree to disagree?
First of all, even you as an individual, there is no way that you will agree with someone 100%, including your siblings, for example, or even your parents. You cannot, you are your own person. You've grown and then you have now formed your own opinions about certain things. There are certain things that you look at now from a very different spec, based on the people you've interacted with, based on your experiences, based on the things that you've gone through. Now, when I talk about having arguments is normal, is in the spectrum of even in work, relationships, in marriage, you will sit and maybe discuss that we want to live in Karen, for example. And then your significant other is thinking, hey, Karen is way beyond our scope. We can afford to live in Kilimani. Now, those arguments are healthy because you disagree to agree or you agree to disagree. But then when it gets to a place where that argument is coming from a place of abuse, and abuse in this sense is someone can abuse you emotionally, so you don't have to be abused physically. Someone can abuse you financially. Someone can be able to take advantage of your insecurities and your traumas and your past. So you need to understand that this argument is conversational. It's in a place where you talk to someone, you communicate, and then this person listens to you, they understand what it is that you're communicating, and then they respond accordingly. But when it gets to a place where that argument leads to abuse, it leads to insults, it leads to being demeaned, then it's not healthy. Because the whole dynamics of having relationships is understanding your boundaries. And the thing I tell people is never compromise on your boundaries. Your boundaries should never have a but or maybe. No, they need to be very clear. If your boundaries are, you need to keep time. If someone continuously disrespects your boundaries like that, you need to decide what actions to take against this person. So having arguments is where you have something that is healthy, you listen to the other person, understand what they're saying, and then respond accordingly, and vice versa. Because that is where now you're able to articulate your issues, you're able to express yourself. And again, I tell people, you need to be emotionally aware. You need to be able to control your own emotions, to be able to control situations. Because if you're a person who, just when something is said about you, ukona outburst, you just start running your mouth, you have a problem. You have to look inward before you start projecting it outwards. Because the thing that people say about other people is mostly they're projecting their own insecurities. Because if you cannot control someone, what happens? That is where now the beginning of this toxic cycle continues, because it is, you cannot be able to control the other party. And most of the time as human beings is we want to be in charge. We want our way to carry the day. But that is not life. It's about compromise. It's about listening to the other person, understanding what they're saying, and then articulate your own issues in an appropriate and respective way.
Right. Let me continue taking a look at the comments here. So Donna Derek says, yeah, even I am okay, still strong, much safer. I won't explain why, but I thank my creator. Siko na emotional weakness, but kuachana ndiyo nasikia poa kuliko venye tulikuwa kimoja. Never date a woman with many men as friends. Tushanga with a couple of emojis there. Let me take a look at others that I'd love both of you to tell us. Double standards, basically a partner can do anything, but you can't do exactly the same. That's according to Hilkia Khan. There's one interesting one, by the way. Someone says, oh yes, Phoebe Nachesa, just inbox for details. It's shocking. Phoebe, just call us and tell us. 0795-045-864 is the number. So Richard, what are some of those subtle things that, you know, because I mean, we've established that at the end of the day, there's agree to disagree. But what are some of those subtle things that the man or maybe even the woman might be saying in the relationship that are actually make this person that if you're someone who's watching, they say, hey, by the way, this is one toxic relationship that I'm in?
I think one of the greatest experiences I would use that will help anyone to navigate whatever relationship they're into is to understand that when someone shows you who they are, they reveal themselves who they are. Believe them. An abusive person, there's a way they always cross the boundaries. There are certain telltale behavior patterns that reveal this potentially can slide the wrong direction, or it's veering off the course to which I want for myself. If he slaps you, I don't care how much he will explain himself out of that conduct. That is a huge red flag right there.
Do you leave immediately though? Because as you're saying, you know, you asked, someone asks you, "Mbono utoki?" Well, I think one of the biggest answers that people say is, I'm giving him or her, you know, the time. So again, even as you're also telling us some of these things, is it because, I mean, someone probably had a bad day and they did something, and then at the back of the mind, then later they're like, hey, I shouldn't have done that.
The truth is, relationships are driven by two mature adult individuals who have two thinking heads independent of the other. So you most naturally see things totally different from me, like she would see things different from me. But that does not warrant the need for me to bully my wife or my fiancé or my spouse or my significant other into behavior patterns they do not necessarily feel does not match up to their values and the way of doing things. You would find that the biggest abuse always begins with words. So if I communicate certain emotions with my words and you perceive you're threatened, that's a huge flag right there. One is to beat. This one now is not necessarily beating, but it's expressed in words. You're having a fight about finances, then before you know it, nakwambia usinilete, and any other things that follow thereafter, you're like, Apo, I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe. If I see him begin talking like this, I need to back off in this particular direction. And one of the greatest experiences I've had in counseling relationships is that you saw the flags and you ignored them. You kept on this false optimism that this person would change, and you find that they don't change. Because what informs their kind of abuse and toxicity, you might not be able to handle it. Let's say if it's abuse, it's through sexual abuse. And what informs his conduct is pornography. If he's been obsessed with these idealistic things which are done on in pornographic movies, and you think they will match up the rhythm of his spouse, and she's unresponsive to any of his commitments, that would be very frustrating, because this man is drinking from a toxic cystic pool and bringing it to you, and he thinks she's going to bring this vibe and connect, and you know some of the things people see in movies. You lift this young lady and throw her on the couch. My friend, try some of this furniture. This side is a metal. You break her back. So if she responds to you and say, "Hey, sweetheart, I can't do that," you're bound to see some of these things that being exerted on you have a root, has a flavor which is not healthy for you. Turn away from it immediately. Be able to say, I don't, this is what I want to myself.
Bangerechi, what do you live after the first slap or the second slap? I'm taking a look at quite a number of comments here.
Yeah.
Joseph Otieno, some over 20 years with the devil called, okay, I won't even mention the name of that person. But then ata ametag huyo mtu. And I'm taking a look at, if this is genuine, I mean, this is a whole 20 years for Joseph Otieno, texting us here.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, now the fact that you're telling this person, because, I mean, Richard says, probably someone didn't see the red flags. But then now someone got into a new relationship. They're very keen on specific red flags. In the previous one, they probably had that. And then they were like, now for this one, in case I ever see this one, I'm leaving instantly. So should we tell them that after the first slap, we're in?
Me, I would say, in fact, before the slap lands, you will have seen the pattern. They will be saying things like, why? I can do this and that. They start by, using some words. And I usually tell people, from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And you form these things in your head. Before, Nyaringita, before I start insulting you, before I start saying certain things to you as a partner or a significant other, mind yangu itakuwa imeprocess. I will be thinking about it every single time, because what usually happens is you're waiting for a moment to snap. Then you can be able to express yourself. Now, by the time that slap lands, there are so many words that, came before that. And to someone like now, that Joseph Otieno that you're speaking about, that person is expressing themselves from a place of pain. And let me tell you, when you stay with pain for so long, it becomes so frustrating that you are ready to talk and you just want to speak to someone and you want someone to hear you out. And I tell people, there's so much power in your subconscious mind, because what it is that you feed your head is exactly what will manifest. Because you start thinking, you start nurturing these thoughts, and then you will start expressing them bit by bit. And it's very subconscious, because now your mind is progressively accepting these things. And then one time, that person will tell you something. And the first thing you will do is, I will show them that they will never disrespect me again. And that thought alone is warranting a reaction. And when that person tells you something that will not, it will hit you the wrong way, you will definitely react. And I usually tell people, men, 90% of the time, they react physically. Women, we run our mouths, because that is what we are very good at sometimes. So you end up running your mouth, and you will say so many things that in your mind you think it will hurt this person, and especially below the belt. What will they do?
And it does.
Yeah, and the only way men will respond is, because she's possibly not as strong as I am, if I hit her, it will shut her up. Will you shut up? No, that woman will run their mouth, like their life depends on it. So I tell people, before it gets there. Yes. So when it really gets there, is live. Just, and I tell people, living is the hardest thing to do, and I'm speaking from experience, because the moment you tell yourself that you want to live, believe me, you're not ready. Because when you want to live, you will not even tell anyone. You will pack and go. That is, you will live. And then by the time you're looking back in a year's time, you'll be like, what was I thinking? What was I waiting for? But then what usually keeps people is the emotional connection you have to that person. And then the fear of, mostly it's the fear of the unknown. Even in friendships, you will find that you're connected to someone for so long that they do you dirty, not once, not twice, continuously. They will say things about you, and you will still keep crawling back, because in your mind, you have some emotional intertwinement that you don't want to let go. But the minute you start working on yourself and you acquire that thing I call self-awareness, when you understand yourself from the inside, when you're able to control your emotions, Nyaringita, there is nothing you will not control under the planet. Nothing. So just work on your emotions, because that is where the trick is, because everyone knows their limit. You know there's certain things that I can't stomach. Yeah. And you want to tell yourself that I will persevere in this relationship because it's not realistic. Just when you know your limit and you see this relationship is not working out. Like now, for example, there's been a story that has been going on social media of a lady that was unfortunately killed by the husband, allegedly. And there's some of the content people are putting online about this lady is just so disturbing, because why would we justify death because in your mind this person was cheating on their significant other? There were issues of infidelity. And I ask myself, this is a relationship that has been going on for over 6 years. You want to tell me this person didn't know from the get-go? Because you know the person that you're dating. The only difference is you do not want to accept it yourself. You keep telling yourself, this person will change, or I will help them change. If someone is not willing to change, there's nothing you can do about it. Whether you shower them with money, with gifts, with anything. If this person doesn't want to change, they will not do it.
They won't change. Okay, yeah. Richard, so how do you tell someone that you're very toxic and you're quite narcissistic and I can't really stay with you? How do you unpack it to them and tell them? Do you straight up tell them? Okay, I mean, for us, us as Gen Z will straight out tell you, we're toxic. But then, for someone who isn't really as courageous as that, how do you stand up in front of someone and tell them, you are quite toxic and I can't be with you in this relationship?
I think the dynamics are different. From where I come from, Generation X, we had a way we bridle our tongue, and we would not say outrightly to people's faces certain things, because we care. There's a way we are raised to care for relationships. We nurture and foster relationships. But this generation that just mentioned, they don't give a damn about it. They will just say it. How you respond to it, it's totally
it's your problem.
Your responsibility, not my responsibility. But if one comes from a relationship, let's say ladies, she's mentioned about women using their words to get at man, eat at the self-esteem of a man. If women come from a background where they bash men, quite likely every trail of a relationship they have, they will use their words. And words are powerful. Words are creative. You say things and they come into existence. You say things and quite likely it creates a vibration and a reciprocity from another person. I think it shouldn't be a secret when someone is conducting themselves in a manner that hurts you, that seeks to harm your life. Be bold and assertive to pointedly tell them, hey, the way you're treating me is not right. You might not necessarily say toxic, but be affirmative to rightly point out with clarity that the things you're doing and saying are hurtful, and I can't sit around and go ahead.
And even stomach this.
Exactly.
Okay. As well as Ngerechi, I think we have about less than 2 minutes to sum up this conversation. So I'll ask each of you a minute each, a tip, because even as you say, you're really going to tell someone, but then at the end of the day, that can actually be now the whole turning point of now that relationship. Someone saying, okay, so I am toxic, so now let me show you my whole toxic traits, really, because you think I am toxic. So how advice is someone who is really in this? Because at the end of the day, as you're saying, that whole incident is just a tip of the iceberg. There's so many unreported, things that happen that we as media who haven't really even talked about them, really. So it's a whole other conversation. So, tips, advice to someone who is in this whole predicament. We'll start with you, Ngerechi.
Thank you, Nyarengita. First of all, I really try to tell people, before you get into a relationship, work on yourselves. Work on the things that, because you've been through certain situations, before you get into any other relationship or even any friendship, is you ask yourself, what kind of a person am I? Because if you are a good person, you will be good to other people. If you are a terrible person, you will be terrible to other people. And the thing is, we try to camouflage our personas, our feelings, our, how we look at people with some pretenses here and there. We try to act being people that we are not. And for anyone that is already in such existing relationships, I would just want to say, examine your thoughts, examine your behavior, and ask yourself, why are you in that relationship to begin with? What is it that is keeping you in that relationship? Because as I said, we all follow a certain pattern. It is either how we were raised, the environment we grew up in, the people that we have interacted with, the teachers, the people that have taught us, the school of life generally. So some of the habits we have is we've picked it from the people we've connected with over time. So you just sit, analyze yourself, ask yourself questions. Would I want to continue being here? And please, if you're being abused, any form of abuse, just up and leave. Just leave. There's no, don't wait for someone to kill you or kill someone. Okay. Thank you.
Richard, in a minute, your final thoughts.
My final thought would be abuse thrives in silence. Don't be silent. Don't be quiet about it. be bold to ask and look out for help, therapy and counseling. Place an emphasis for personal growth and leadership on yourself. And when you do, there are tools that are available to help you to work on that one. Please, if you can, reach out to us and we can see how we can help. There's one program I can boldly recommend for everyone, and it's a prepaid sponsored program. It's called Beyond Success Equip program. If you can go to Facebook, you can find it, Beyond Success Equip Kenya. There's specific subject that you need to place emphasis on: personal growth and relationship. That will be a tool you can give to yourself and see how you can navigate this journey to love yourself, but also to love those around you.
Right. Thank you very much, Richard. Zio Zimbalist, counselor, as well as Judith Ngrechi, wellness coach. Asante sana for giving us this particular tips. This conversation continues on our digital platforms. We are asking you, have you ever been in a toxic relationship? You can head there and give us your comments. Naona wengine wanasema posta pia utupatie experience zako. Esther Matei, the relationship feels like you are the only one in it because every time you are forcing it to work, but